Today's Easter Sunday, and it's my and Gypsy's anniversary, 16 years. So we had a couple little whatevers, but, about her, she didn't know what was what about anything, and she'd been in a cage all right. She'd never been on ground before. My other dogs was different than that. And she's been everything that's kept me going since this accident. I fell in 97. The accident I had, I was doing an art exhibit. I went to step off scaffolding. They was doing the art show based on my house. All that clutter meant all that, and the paintings and what have you, meant all that to produce that circumstance. It's called a cozy cottage. It's what it was installed as, and that's how I felt. And 14 foot. And broke about everything I had. Anyway, from hospital to hospital, and they diagnosed me finally. I fell on June 20th of 97 at about 8 that evening, and I thought I had broke my back. I was awake and after I hit the ground, and knocked my teeth out. But I developed a neurological disease called RSD, and which they're still working with, and I have seizures, from it, and other than me being as stubborn, as I was, during all that, I was just determined that nothing wasn't going to change nothing for me, and of course, the stubborner I was, I guess the worse it probably was for me, but I had the diabetes that had to be dealt with, and otherwise it was going to be what was dealing with me. I was born in the mountains of North Carolina. Good Lord, Thanksgiving morning. And I grew up there. My mom gave me to my grandmother to raise, and any and all the pictures, which I have many of, but she was one that was always holding me. Her or Elsie. I don't have any of my mom holding me. I was the second to the oldest, and my mama had 4. She carried full term that either was born dead or died, and so actually there would have been 8 of us, but my dad claimed I was my uncle's. So there I was the one that was the problem. Daddy was was schizophrenic, paranoid, and he was alcoholic. So if you didn't take it, you got it otherwise. Anyway, my whole life went through that because he never accepted me. Till just before he died, but I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. I loved him. I called him Daddy. Because it was early fall, and, I turned 3 in November. Daddy, he never come about at all, and he did take me and leave me, and I remember that. He carried me down below the house, and Granny did, down below Granny's there, and anyway, and me and Granny sat and held me, and picked Tommy toes and put them in her apron that was pulled up, and so Daddy left. Never came back. And I went from making like, $12 or $13, $17 a week, curb hopping, rain, ice, or what, didn't matter. The person that came by there was a friend that I went to school with, which was a couple years older than me. Maybe 3 years older than me, but, because at that point, I was probably in the 8th or 9th grade, and he come by the drive-in there and wanted to know if I would maybe want to go out for, riding around. Well, I didn't know what riding around was. So where we ended up going was what they called a gay bar, and I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I had no idea. And he took me the second time, which was when I met Paul. He was just standing up against the door frame, and he had sent somebody to tell me that he wanted to meet me, which I didn't know what any of that stuff meant. He wanted to know about coming and picking me up and me coming down here. Anyway, me and Granny talked about it, and Granny told me, she said, why don't you just go and see, and, she said, if you like it down there or not, and there's a painting hanging in there in the dining room that she handed me then, and was crying, and handed me that painting. She looked at Paul, and she said, you better take care of him. She said he likes pretty things, I cried the whole way here, I know, but everything was James and Paul, or Paul and James. There was no just James or just Paul, and that's why everybody knew us. It was never said, well, they're gay, or that kind of label. See, a lot of things during my earlier relationship, say with Paul, my parents didn't ever question anything. I don't know if they just didn't want to or they just didn't. And I didn't have anything I had to say. Hey, open your eyes is my point of view. They had differences in thinking and letting whoever become who they are, as opposed to just taking it away. And that's the problem with people is, you can't take away who somebody is, because that somebody is going to still be there after you've even done all that, and so same with me and Paul. He tried to control me and not let me do. No, I couldn't be this, couldn't do that, whatever. Anyway, I did anyway, and so it pushed him away. Because his theory was I was going to become who I was and leave him, which that's not what it was about. Graduating from high school or going to college and that type of stuff. That's not what that was about. When I split up with Paul, or basically decided I couldn't live with him, I never loved anybody else. And of course Paul died. He committed suicide. He never got himself settled down or whatever. I don't know. And stuff like the trees, like the Japanese maples, the ones in the front and ones back here, was from year to year. It was a commemorative thing that we did, always done for our anniversary. And so I continued planting them, after he was gone, and, I still do, but he died in 1992, and so I just kept on with what I can, and what I can, I get somebody to try to help me, but, a lot of times that just don't work. Just like I've been here, all the years he wasn't here, look how big they got anyway. And how beautiful they are. So it's a little scent to him, and because I loved him. Never was anybody else. Never will be. because as we live them, change things. And but that doesn't necessarily have to be, because as long as you keep in your heart what was, I mean, it can always be. Because they say nothing lasts forever, but that's just not true. Because it does. Yeah, I think so.